Ah, Wing Commander Montgomery Fortescue III here. VC, GC, OBE, OM, GBE, DSO, bloody etc. ETC. What? You want great detail about our first meeting, the Professor and I? Well, fair enough. I would hate to bore those who have heard this story in short form in another episode, but it adds inherent value to the information I disperse, I find. The year was 1913. Or was it 1914? So many years have passed that it is often difficult to decipher when things happen. It was Montrose Air Station, one of the 12 new air bases that had been proposed by the British government and to be operated by the Royal Flying Corps. The First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill himself, had given the go-ahead, and Montrose was the first of these to allow aircraft to protect the Royal Navy bases at Rosyth, Cromarty and Scapa Flow. It was told later that old Winnie actually met with Nessie for a chat on his journey when he was up here. Something about her and the war effort. Found that out in the summer of '74, actually, doing the job. You ken, as they say up in Scotland. Montrose? Oh, you've never seen the place? Well, most haven't, but this small patch of blight here has had some of the most amazing things take place on it, and above it, that have ever, well, you know, taken place. The base at this time was a patch of, well, wind-blown grass on the Scottish coast. The sort of place where mist comes in sideways and the gulls look like they've been planning something unspeakable for weeks. They're all evil sods. Have to say, the gulls have got no better. Still take a fish supper out of your hand when promenading down at the harbour. Back in the day, we could sort that rot out with my purdies. A couple of blasts from the old shotties would have minced Seagull, and a happier population would have resulted. Bloody protected species now. What rot? It's always bloody yoghurt weavers these days, isn't it? Making trouble. Have you met them? Vegans and the like? Vegans. Binky, my old battle axe, does yoga. No comment on yoga. I have checked whether it has anything to do with Satan, religion, or anything magical. Turns out no magic, no summoning of demons, just the disappearance of large sums of cash into the pockets of hemp linen trousers. He's the veganese, the yoga teacher chappie. Thin, pale, looks like he's never had a good feed in his life. Well, I suppose without bacon butties, how could he have? Bet he smokes that marijuana as well. What's it called? Yes. Met him. Had a bun in his hair. Yes, a bun. Binky says it's called a man bun and is very fashionable. I put her straight, though, because I am so wakened. Wokened. Is it woke? Woke. That's the biscuit. I turned to her and said, "No, Binks, old girl, that is a hair bun. It would be sexist to refer to it as a man bun. You see?" Oh, where was I? Oh, yes. Montrose Air Base. It was the first proper RAF base in the country, though we were still technically in the Royal Flying Corps back then. The RAF came later when the brass at the top recognised how vital planes would be. When was that? 1918? Brought the Royal Naval Air Service and the Royal Flying Corps together. Great days. Oh, I saw it. I got off track again. Montrose Air Base, 1913-ish. The air smelt of oil, sea salt, and fear of the newfangled contraptions built from canvas, string, and horse glue, and rather lots of, well, let's just say a lot of hope. I was there to train the men to handle those biplanes, mainly to stop them from decapitating themselves, I must admit. I didn't do much training, pointed at the fast spinning bit at the front and told them not to touch it while it was, well, spinning. If they got that, then I would put them on my old Winchester 6 HP BSA motorbike. If they made it down the runway and back, I would throw them into the pilot's seat and let them take a kite up. Learning on the job is the best way. Any man who could ride the bike could fly a plane. Still the truth. Still have the old BSA. Great bike. Don't take it out very much these days. Binky does worry. She's a decent old filly that way. To be completely frank, it has done more miles in the back of a rescue lorry than it's done on its own tyres. 6 horsepower, you know. Very disappointing to learn the average horse has 15 horsepower. How does that work? bloody stupid. What? Ah, yes, the recovery service? That was it. Marvellous. I still miss the old Automobile Association recovery chappies saluting their badged members on the side of the road. Think it was part of the start of the rot of standards when they stopped. I used to polish my badge to a vibrant shine, I tell you. I was very proud of the AA. I needed them often. What? Oh, sorry. Sorry? My God, back to the story. It was a quiet post in Montrose if you don't count the occasional engine fire and a horrendous death in a mangled pile of canvas, wood, wicker and string. A quick way to go back in those times. None of these ejector seat thingamies or parachutes to save a chap. Not many injuries back then, just a sudden stop and a one-way trip to a coffin. It is often said in jest these days, but we did not think it was funny back then, when we genuinely believed that any crash a fellow walked away from, even with a limp, scalds minor burns, and the seat ripped out of their pants, was just a heavy landing. I went through so many trousers, and Mrs. Miggins was always stitching them back together. After a good thorough wash, you understand. Many types of accidents happen when you're falling out of the sky. Anyway, let's fill you in about moi. No, I'm not French. Just ambidextrous in that language. You'd be forgiven for thinking I was immortal. I'm not. I bruise, bleed, cough, sneeze, and occasionally get indigestion from kippers, just like everyone else. The difference, you see, is that where other men die of those things, I somehow don't. Now, I wasn't born lucky. No, born in Surrey, 1895. Nothing particularly fortunate about Surrey. Grey skies, damp cricket pitches, and the looming inevitability of war. My luck was actually given to me. Yes, gifted. Stuck to my bones like a burr you can't shake off. Still not sure I appreciate it. Still banned from every casino in Macau. Can't blame them. Baccarat was my weapon of choice. Fair clean them out. Wonderful. Got stopped at the border in 51 with several £1,000s worth of local currency in my luggage. Took old Bertie Aylesbury to get me out of that one. Sad the way he went. Hung himself with stockings. His own stockings. Had a thing for wearing women's underwear. There were rumours, and we'd all been to private school, so it was no shock. We all understand it, He's just a regular chap. Although I do hear his young footman never got over it. Poor chap. Devastated. What? Oh, yes, how did I get my look? It happened in South Africa when I was 18, and the Boer War was doing what wars always do, mincing boys into corpses and villages into ash. Mincing boys. Not funny, but Bertie did a lot of mincing, in the other way. Handsome boy. I was young, rash, and thought of myself rather good with a rifle. I wasn't. I nearly blew my own boot off on several occasions. Sadly, I eventually entered the RAF. Well, not sadly, it's been the greatest days of my life. I'm good at aiming planes at whatsits, but not so good with the old fire sticks. Shotguns, yes, but that's cheating, isn't it? Well, it is in my eyes. Anyway, sorry, I digress once more. One evening, our patrol stumbled across a tribal camp caught in the middle of the Boers' crossfire and our own. Xhosa families, I think that's how you say it. They speak with clicks. Trapped inside while the bullets of two different forces tore through the air. Without thinking, I ran in. I don't remember how, just flashes. A bullet nicked my collar. A shell burst yards away, but the shrapnel bent itself around me like it better places to be. Rescued a bloody lot of them. Not all of them. In and out I went with as many of the terrified as I could carry. Finally, I carried the chief's daughter out under one arm, his wife under the other, while his son clung to my belt like a determined barnacle, and somehow I walked out of it, not a scratch. The chiefman was not there at the time, doing something irksome somewhere to some wildlife, but he returned the next day as we packed up camp after sending the Boers off with their tails between their legs. Ha! I tell you, marvellous. The chief, a man with eyes like old embers, said I had interfered with fate. Not very thankful, was he, to be honest? Their culture is somewhat different to our own, not British, if you know what I mean, not knocking other cultures, but it's not British. Told me off for saving what was meant to be lost. Did have 18 wives and more children than can be healthy for anyone, though, so maybe one wife would not be missed. Not a nice thing to say. Probably a good thing in a strange way for him. He was getting on. Might have given him a night off, if you know what I mean. He insisted his people repay me, though. I told him Englishmen don't accept gifts, which is a lie if you're offering. We'll accept we'll accept anything if it comes with gin. And so one night, under a sky that looked far too large for an 18-year-old boy to stand beneath, I found myself at the centre of the circle of Amikiha. I think that's how you say it. The healers, the diviners, men and women who spoke with the ancestors, and I swear to this day, the ancestors bloody well answered back. The diviners stripped me off, only to my drawers, mind, I was not up for any of that funny business, and painted me with ochre, drew patterns on my chest that shifted like smoke, and chanted until the stars themselves seemed to lean closer. And then, silence, nothing. And the chief stepped forward, touched my forehead, and whispered a word I couldn't pronounce if you gave me a month to try. And that was it. Nothing. It was a bit of a letdown, to be honest, at the time, or so I thought. The next morning, our column was ambushed. Every man jack cut down where they stood. My horse was shot, collapsed beneath me, and should have crushed me flat. Except it didn't. It should have, and it should have trapped me where I lay, too. But no, I got up without a bruise, dusted myself off, and legged it, as the younger chaps say, under heavy gunfire. Every shot missed. I escaped my pursuers easily, not by my guile, but by their inability to notice me. Was ridiculous at times. Once I pretended to be a tree, and one of the boorish types relieved himself on me. Didn't notice me while he warmed my leg. Bizarre. I'm not that good an actor. Took me 3 days to get back to our lines, with many run-ins with the enemy. Kept bloody falling into water miraculously in that place. Water is very hard to find there, but every time I was thirsty, I tripped up and ended up face down in a stream, or pond. When hungry, I found sausages in my pocket. I swear they hadn't been there before. British soldiers do not carry cooked sausages in their kit. Although, maybe they should. I'll suggest it to them at the next Air Marshal meeting. From that day on, it was like the universe had given me a permanent pass of leaving away. Crashed planes, walked away uninjured, just pride, and once singed my moustache off. That hurt, I have to say. Stunk too, burnt hair, you know. Gas attacks, lungs clear as a bell. Sudden wind direction change would send the clouds of it back towards the enemy trenches. Plague in Egypt. I got the sniffles. Once, a black dog charged across no man's land, jumped for my throat. I slipped and fell in a shell hole, and it sailed right over me, snarling like the devil itself. Then the bloody thing came back and wanted scruffing behind the ears. Can't tell you the dog's nickname. Not these days. Really not acceptable in polite society. Yes. But here's the thing about luck. It isn't free. It never is. Mine has teeth. Everyone around me, well, they aren't so lucky. In fact, I often wonder if I sort of suck the luck from others. I bloody hope not. The Spitfire Squadron in 40. I was the only one to limp home from a raid over Calais. My Lancaster crew in 43. All gone except me staggering out of a burning fuselage with nothing worse than a full bladder. I could list more, but I don't wish to. The wives. I've had 3. All happy marriages, I have to say, but no divorces, not one. Secret to a good marriage is to see each other as little as possible, I find. So you can imagine me always being on a war front kept them rock solid. But the wives, they age, and I watched the things I loved most die. The universe may spare you, but it doesn't spare your friends or family. No, my luck did not work there. Damn it. No. So no, I'm not immortal. I'm just inconveniently, sort of unfairly alive, or a walking accident waiting to happen, except it never does. Well, it doesn't happen to me, and sometimes late at night I wonder if that word whispered into my skull at 18 wasn't a blessing at all, but a damn curse. Perhaps it was a bargain. Perhaps those ancestors with their old ember-filled eyes said, "Let this boy live, and let him watch everyone else he loves burn around him." Fairly rum of them, if so. That's the trouble with luck, you see. It runs out. Eventually. It just hasn't run out for me yet. People often also remark, usually after a few too many sherries, that I don't look my age. It was the big 130th birthday party just last Tuesday. You don't look your age, a polite way of saying, good Lord, why aren't you dead yet? I take no offence. They're right. By the laws of medicine and common sense, I ought to have been a footnote on a cenotaph decades ago. But the thing about luck, real bone-deep, green-eyed lady luck, is that she doesn't let the usual rules stick to you. Coughs clear up, wounds knit faster than they should. Diseases that knock others sideways barely tickle. I was once quarantined in Bangkok during a cholera outbreak and left the hotel fitter than I went in. Put on half a stone, actually. Well, that was thanks to the rice pudding, made with proper cream, you see. Time itself seems to trip over me as if it's distracted. There are... Where other men stoop grey and fold into themselves, I've merely thinned. Weathered, yes, but not crumbled. It seems, and I say this with no scientific evidence beyond my own exasperating existence, that a man may live very much longer than expected, provided Lady Luck has taken a particular shine to him. Anyway, that's enough about me. Back to the professor and our first meeting. It was a filthy night, clouds rolling in off the sea as if aggravated. It was going to blow a bloody hoolie, a belter of a storm. We were busy tying everything down that needed tying down. We didn't really notice much else. And then he just walked straight past us. I was incredulous at first, I was. He was not in uniform, but was definitely an Englishman. A chap can tell these things from the man's gait as he walks, and the general cut of his jib, to be honest. He was also not in any bloody century I recognise. I know that sounds somewhat odd, but it's the utter truth to boot of the moment. He wore a dark coat that made him look like a shadow that had been sewn into the shape of a man, and his eyes... God, his eyes. God help me, they looked like they'd seen every battle since the world was young and hadn't forgiven any of them for the horror that they'd left him with. Later found out that he'd been at most of the battles and started a few to boot. He didn't say a word to any of us. He did not engage with us. He did not even see us. Seemed a somewhat rude chap. He just marched straight past us and onto the airfield as if the place belonged to him. I called after him something along the lines of, "Oi! You just can't!" And he ignored me. Instead, he slowly walked out into the middle of the field while I sort of trotted out behind him like a curious Jack Russell at supper. "I say!" I repeated. "I say!" Again he acted the cad and ignored me. As I got closer, I could see him mumbling something under his breath. I couldn't hear it, though, because of the blasted storm. As I got within arm's length, he raised a hand, signifying for me to wait a moment as he knelt.
"Sorry, old chap,"
he said.
"I will answer all your questions when I've dealt with those things."
He now pointed to the sky as the lightning lit it, as if on command. 2 giant airships in the sky, not so far away from us, really. The lightning was being created by them as they flew. I was struck dumb. How could they be flying in this storm? Why would they be flying in this storm? It had to be certain death for the crew. It had to be. I have taken some silly chances when taking flights, but this was execution by storm for the poor fellows.
"They are the storm,"
he said.
"and there's no one on them."
He continued as if he'd read my mind. I turned back to him to ask a question. Again, the hand raised to make me take a pause. I know, I should have taken charge of the situation, but although the man was without rank or uniform, his confidence and his lack of dismay at what he saw made me believe that he had the authority in this situation. Again, luck had allowed me not to make a silly mistake and rugby tackle him to the ground for being a spy. He closed his eyes, muttered in some language that tasted like dust and candle smoke, and then he drew a neat circle on the grass with a vial of glowing water. I'd seen the water fluoresce off the coast of India a while back, and the water he poured looked something like that. I thought he was mad. And then he said,
"If you value your aircraft, you'll want this finished before it arrives properly."
It? I didn't have to wait long to find out what it was. It was the storm itself. The clouds attacked first, not rolling in, but hunting shadows. Thick, black, and moving against the wind, they swept anything they touched into themselves. Then the lightning. It wasn't regular lightning. It was alive with claws, teeth, and a hunger for wood, fabric, and flesh. A werewolf. It came crashing down, striking the earth with the force of artillery shells. Mud and clods of turf were thrown into the air, where they were then hurled as if something was throwing them accurately at anything that could be smashed.
I'll need you to distract it. I'm afraid I didn't get here quick enough. Not finished the counter spell to it.
How do you distract an airship-created storm? Not something we learned.
Any of your chaps brave enough to toss themselves up and into that?
He asked with resignation and sadness.
Well, I mean, obviously they might not come back. But if I don't get this finished, that thing is going to hit the naval bases. I'm afraid you're just a low-priority target and very unlucky to be in its path.
So I ran back to the pilots, who were all huddled in the shelter of what was mostly wreckage of the airfield's buildings. Right, chaps. I know this sounds inescapably idiotic, but we need to go up and do a bit of shooting at things, I told them. Many pairs of concerned and frightened eyes looked back at me. They all knew it would probably be a one-way journey, but then, of course, all the chaps stood up and saluted. Bloody volunteering! Every man, jack of them. Sorry, a bit of a tear in the eye. We rushed to where the kite should have sat. Wreckage. Only 3 of the BE-2Cs still seemed whole. All the fighter variant types, thank goodness, or thank that green-eyed lady. Well, somehow we got them started. Somehow we got them airborne. And that, my friends, is when the true horror of the night began.